Hello, friends. Today we've got another quarterfinal matchup in the Final Fantasy V Career Day Randomizer Variety Tournament between FieryBlizzard and FrancoiseHarpie. Our mode this week is Blackout Boss Bingo. There are 25 bosses on our bingo card, and the first player to take all of them out will advance to the semifinals. Welcome into SpeedGaming. I am far and away the best Final Fantasy V Career Day commentator who is available at this hour, Archfield Monk. I'll also be tracking today, by which of course I mean that you in chat will be tracking, and I will press buttons when you tell me that I've missed something. So it looks like our race will be getting started very soon here. Fiery and Francoise, two very veteran racers of this randomizer, should be in for a great match today. And just taking a cursory look at the bingo card here, it looks like we've got a decent mix of difficult and not so difficult bosses there. A lot of these seeds end up in the deep void. I'll come across a lot of them that are full clear or maybe full clear -1 just by nature of the fact that you've got 25 bosses on that card and there are 50 bosses altogether. So it'll be interesting to see. Starting jobs, pardon me, will have a lot to do with how things go. And looks like we'll be starting pretty soon here. We are off. A fairly standard looting loop to open most of these seeds. Both of our players will hit Tycoon Castle first. Looks like some money, a bow, a regal cutlass, and a mithril sword. So not much there in the first chamber, but there's plenty of chests in this castle as well as a hint. We'll see how many hints our racers grab as they go through the seed today. Those can sometimes be a little bit misleading in this mode. You don't want to fade any given check that's barren too long because there might be a boss there that you need. On the other hand, getting an idea of where your tablets are can be very useful so that you can access those sometimes critical pieces of gear or spells or abilities in the sealed castle. But looks like largely run-of-the-mill stuff here so far. Image white magic can be handy. And we get the first hint there in Tycoon. The submarine key is present in World 2. A lot of those key item hints can be very handy, so you can keep an eye out for things. Does look like we're starting with Black Mage today, so that presents some possibilities if you get your hands on some black magic or some breakable rods. So not a whole lot there in Tycoon. Picked up some sellables and some money. Fiery's headed straight to Pirate's Cave. So the way the bingo works, the Neo X Death Goblin square doesn't actually result in Neo X Death. Neo X Death actually isn't present in this mode at all, the way the flags are set up. So it will always be the goblins. Let's see. Oh, Charm Song and Hero. Charm, White Magic, and Hero Song there for Fiery in the Beginner's House and Tool. Exploder was also picked up in the Pirate's Cave, which can be very helpful against Apocalypse, who is on our boss card today. So I think Neo X-Death can theoretically be randomly placed, but it would depend on the flags that you were using. In this flag set, Neo X-Death is always replaced by those goblins. I'm not totally sure on that. But at least in this mode, you will never see Neo X-Death. His spot will be replaced by one of the other bosses. Ooh, we see Slash there, so a group instant kill picked up by Fiery. And Shell White Magic also extremely useful in the right situation. And a Murasame picked up by Fiery as well. Flying Lanka Ruins on the Path to the Void, so that could mean a chain. It could mean there's possibly a tablet there, so we'll keep an eye out for the Adamantite. Do see some javelins there on screen. We don't have throw or ninja yet, but those can be extremely valuable in the early game. That weapon shop and tool, I think that is. Did see some light staves there in that shop for Fiery, so perhaps a way through Neo X-Death if they have a staff user, or pardon me, not Neo X-Death, but regular old X-Death, if they don't have much offense that can take care of him by that point of the seed there in Surgat Castle. Fiery is a little short on cash at the moment, but I think took note of that. And he's going to head further down into Surgat to pick up the hint here, as Francois has finished up his tool shopping and is going to head toward the Wind Shrine, it looks like. Fiery's going to save and go to More Village for this chest check. There are 2 boxes here, but you can only take one of them. The first one is a Tinkerbell, so he's going to reset out of that. To answer that question in chat, if you purchase or find an ability, that ability will be for everybody. So everyone will have access to that. You can set it as your secondary ability or what have you. White Wind was in that left box, so Fiery's going to keep that. It can be a very valuable blue magic spell. And it looks like our boss here in the Wind Shrine is Greg 2. So first Greg appearance of the seed. And our black mages have started with Bolt. So probably one round of this, and Greg is going to get off a jump. Take out one of the characters here in all likelihood. And the problem with Greg is that he does all those buffs here, and so he's cut the bolt damage in half, and it'll be kind of tight here at the end. That bolt didn't do it. Yep. Francois is going to have to reset out of that. So that's actually kind of a little bit of a trolly boss to find in the Wind Shrine for your first attempt. Fiery is now into Rugor. I see the image ability there. That can be incredibly handy for some boss fights. I'm thinking here of Minotauros in particular. You can basically nullify everything that he does if everyone has mirages up. Francoise, not liking his chances against Greg 2, is going to head into Carwin. Check out a couple of the shops here. And I saw Fiery check the hint. He popped into the pub there, but I did not see what that hint was. So if anyone happened to catch that, you can take a look. But interestingly enough, Fiery has landed... Okay, he had landed close to Moogle Waterway, but I think he's actually going to head to Bal Castle. Killer Bow for Francoise in Carwin. Situationally useful. Get some enemies if you can find a bow user. Fiery is going to take on his first boss. He does have the slash ability, so he's hoping for something he can slash here. Antlion is not that boss. So he's going to reset instantaneously out of that. Maybe we'll decide to go do a different check instead. And Francoise, still looking for something else to help him progress here, is into Karnak, which has a bunch of different shops. See a couple of different low-level black magic spells there. We see Sleep and Armor, two very handy spells to have as well. Karnak says Fork Tower is on the path to the void, so it was likely that Fork Tower would be required anyway. There are two bosses there. Odds are that at least one of them will be needed to mark a square off the bingo board, but there we go. And when I see a Ninja Crystal, that could be very useful. As we said, we've seen those javelins already in Tool, and we've seen scrolls a bunch of different places. I think most of them are available, at least a couple of them in Surrogate. We also see some Venom Rods, which can be broken by the Black Mages. So Francoise is going to warp out, and he's going to head probably looking for some of that ninja gear that he saw earlier if he made note of that. And it does look like he is going right back to Tool. So going to grab some things that will definitely help him progress. Those javelins are worth well more than their weight, than their price in gold. He's going to grab a full stack of them. Fiery, a little bit more fortunate there to get through Greg, and picks up the second tablet. So Fiery, as soon as he gets out of here, will probably make a sealed castle check. We've got some red shoes there too, as well as an enhancer. That's a decent sword if you need one for, say, a Mystic Knight a little bit later. But here, Fiery is well on his way, and Francoise is too. Francoise has already looted all of the Wind Shrine, just needs to head up and chuck a javelin at Greg, and he'll be well on his way as well. And Bolt 3, that's going to come in real handy with his starting Black Mage party. And Fiery's going to take his newfound offense and head straight for Waltz Meteor. It's a very quick check. Can get that out of the way. Let's see what boss we have here. It is Minotauros. So the Black Mages will not be handy here. However, does have some Fire Rods, and that wasn't quite the damage output he was looking for on that first attempt, so he's going to reset out of that fight. Is Fiery. Francoise forces Greg to remember that he had some important business, and will also pick up his second tablet. Oh, that was Bolt 3 sword magic. Okay, I missed that on the first pass through Wind Shrine. Fiery now fighting at Torna Canal. It is Catastrophe. Ice 2. It's decent offensive output here, and one round will take care of it. Even though Ferris, or Celis, if you prefer, has been turned to a statue. Oh, Deathclaw blue magic there at the Lix Bard for Francoise. Some other good stuff here too. Break Sword. So Francoise is going to trim inventory as Fiery commences looting the ship graveyard. Fire 2 also very welcome to see at this point. Those mid-tier black magic spells can help out in the early game. I got Toad as well. That can sometimes come into play. That's where that fire rod that Fiery had came from. It was the book in Walt's Castle. Let's see. Francoise is going to stash 4 of those light staves for later. Looking forward to X-Death's Castle. It looks like he's going to finish looting walls, probably check the hint as well, as Fiery's on his way up to fight the Siren spot. And it's Atmos. This should be quite doable. A couple of the party members are invariably going to take a dive here at the beginning of the fight, but as long as 3 are up, they have plenty of damage output to take care of Atmos at this spot. Just means that Lena will not be getting any experience out of this one. Break spell picked up for Francoise. I don't know if I saw that when Fiery was through Rugor the first time, but it does look like he has that spell in his menu, so he's seen it. And he is going to try to time up a Lena revival with his last cast of Ice 2 on Atmos. Manages to get that done, so some good experience for the party there at the end of Ship Graveyard for Fiery. And Francoise is going to take his second tablet and walk from Rugor to Sealed. So our first bingo square is checked off, and there's the Adamantite. We know that Flying Lanka Ruins is on the path to the Void. Probably a little bit early for Fiery to want to make that check. Let's see, we've got in Sealed, Flare Black Magic, a Judgment Staff, a Crystal something, the Guard Ring. That was Black level 6. And so Francois is going to pick that up. Genji Armor, Hardened Dagger, Magic Sword level 6 at the 9 o'clock position, a Mirage Vest, and Running Shoes. Running Shoes are basically an insta-pickup whenever you see them. Francois took a moment to see what else was there, but did grab those Running Shoes, has 1 pull left, and will take Magic Sword level 6. And it looks like Fiery will now make that sealed castle check as well. We'll see what he'll opt to grab from the 12 items or abilities available. Grabs running shoes immediately. And interestingly enough, Francoise has switched over to all ninjas and has just, with that black level 6 that he picked up out of Sealed, is just going to roll with that. Seems like a pretty adept party at this point. If you equip Black Magic as the secondary ability for any of these ninjas, and you have scrolls, those scroll throws will do a lot more damage because you have the magic boost from having the Black Magic ability equipped. So that can be a handy setup. And of course, javelins are just going to do a lot of damage too, so Catastrophe is no big deal here at Tournicanal. And Fiery, with his new loadout, is going to head toward Moogle Waterway. Not much in the chest there. But the boss check, of course, is important, and it is Puroburos. It is a party ideally suited to taking on this boss. You've got to take them all out at the same time, or else they are prone to cast Life 2 as their death counter, which will revive the entire rest of the Puroburos party. Fortunately, the HP of this spot is split among the 6 of them, so it shouldn't take much more than a round, and they're kind of slow, so they don't get a lot of opportunities. And I think what we're seeing here, yeah, Fiery had his Fire Rod on Bart's there, and so he's going to chuck that to make sure, he's going to break that rod to make sure that he does enough damage to take them all out here, because he was counting what he'd done to that point. That will make sure he clears the Puroburos, and he's going to get a pile of levels for that kill. Not one of the required bosses on the card, but of course can be in possession of a key item that can block off something else, or maybe even just a nice piece of equipment. Or, I don't know, the first tablet. It's possible that was hinted, and I missed the hint earlier. Fiery had been doing a diligent job of checking hints. So it's possible that that was something that he definitely wanted. Fiery still has not run across Ninja, or else opted not to get it, but he did find the throw ability there in Kelb. And yes, we are playing some bingo today. We've got to clear this entire board of bosses, which means we're probably going to have to clear about 100% of the seed. We see mix ability here. Fire is going to sell that Murasame they picked up earlier. to pick up Mix. And it looks like Francoise is at Waltz Meteor to take on Minotauros. He's actually going to throw one of those katanas that he had on hand. Trying to damage race Minotauros at this spot. Can be a little bit challenging, but only 1,500 hit points at the check. So as long as he gets enough turns in, seems like he should be able to survive with one character left, but of course Minnow will counter at the end with Holy, so only having one character alive isn't going to cut it. Francoise will reset out of that check, as Fiery is on Hiryu Valley. Some decent loot tiering here, so we can check all these chests. Level 2 old blue magic, no way to cast that yet, but nice to have for later. And Francois, still looking to gain some traction here in the early game, is going to go do the first North Mountain check. Sometimes you'll see racers hold off on this one because you can check this in concert with the Bahamut check in World 3. But knowing this, Francois might think that this is a check that has some leverage at this point because Fiery might be disinclined to check it until later. So it's going to go take a look right now. It looks like Fiery has picked up the trainer crystal, so he's going to switch Galuf over to a trainer. We might get to see some trainer strats today. But I think there's also maybe a Flame Whip in his possession, which can be handy too for that Fire 3 proc. And there's another Greg on North Mountain. And Greg is gone. That was Greg 1. So we see Francois getting to mark off that bingo spot. We might not see Fiery do that check for quite a while. Crayclaw here in Hiryu Valley is vulnerable to break, and Fiery gets one of those to land, so the insta-kill on that boss will be good for some more levels. And there, in Kelb, the Waltz Meteor holds the Moogle suit hint. So Minotauros blocking access to the Moogle suit for the moment. But assuming both players have now seen that hint, then that will be a target of some priority. And Fiery, having built some levels now at 2 higher tier checks, is well positioned to be able to take out Minotauros here. We'll see if he can get the job done. Yeah, Fiery has that Flame Whip, and that's part of the reason he switched to the trainer there. Did quite a lot of damage just from the strike, let alone if that happens to proc during a fight. And so a couple of that one Flame Whip shot and a Rod Break will result in the Holy counter, and Minotauros is down. So Fiery picks up the Moogle suit and will have access to, I believe it is 7 top tier chests over there in Moogle Village, so we'll see him warp shard toward World 2 right away. Francois is going to check Bal Castle. We know Antlion is here. This should be doable for Francois. The disappointing part is, well, actually now that I say that, this actually could be a little tricky. The spot doesn't have much in the way of hit points, but the water scrolls definitely help. Let's see, Moogle Village, we've got X-Fight Gil Toss. I missed the first 4 chests because I was glancing at this Antlion fight. I do see X-Fight there, so X-Fight's going on the trainer for that Flame Whip. That's the best weapon that Fiery has available at the moment. So that should do some really good damage against these World 1 checks particularly. And Francois has beaten Antlion, sent him scurrying away, and picks up Ifrit's Fire, so that will allow access to the second library check. But not many required bosses so far. None of the recent fights have been on the card. Only have a couple of squares checked off so far, but that will start to change pretty rapidly as our parties are coming together. Oh, and I see in chat that there was X magic as well there in Local Village, so also very welcome to see. And a seed particularly where we started with black mages. So Fiery's going to do some changing up of his party. He's going to go to check Tycoon Meteor. And Francoise is ready to go take on the Wind Shrine. We see the Iron Claw fight here at Tycoon Meteor. The Sergeant. Francoise going to Catapult. This is an efficient check. There are 2 bosses in this chain. You'll come out of this with the Lunka Meteor available once you beat the boss at Catapult. And there's the loose 3rd tablet. I'm not sure if that was hinted, but I don't think that it was. So Fiery's got 3 tablets now. But maybe didn't see anything in Sealed that he feels like he needs to go back for right the moment. His party is set up quite well to handle basically everything in World 1. So can kind of just continue doing his boss checks here. He's going to stop by the library and head to the roof. Possibly looking to learn some blue magic. Maybe made a check of his levels. This page will cast level 5 Doom. And we know that Fiery is very fond of those blue mage strats where you can use death by math if you get hold of level 2 old early. And we see, yeah, he did make his level check, so he knew that someone was susceptible to level 5 Doom and could learn it at this spot, so hence the book check. Francoise has made very quick work of a boss that I did not see at Catapult. Comes away with just a stealth robe. But again, the Lunka Meteor check now available. Fiery with some blue magic at the ready for later in the seed. And is going to continue making World 1 checks here at Karnak Meteor. Francoise will be very pleased to see the Sergeant fight here, 1 cast a break and it's over. Likewise, Fiery, reasonably pleased to see Chimera Brain here, 1 cast a break and it's over. Perhaps hoping that some of those weaker bosses ended up later in the seed. But that was a very profitable check for Fiery. It looked like Steamship Key and the Time Mage Crystal. Ah, this was Soul Cannon at the catapult check. Francois is much better position now to take out Minotauros at Waltz Meteor. Does so with a couple of javelin throws. Bartz will take a dive, but that's a given. One character is going to go down at that spot. Fiery checks the black chocobo spot. I think both players have now checked that, and I do not recall what was there and did not see it in either case. There's one unique shop there in Crescent. Fiery is going to take a look at that. And is going to check some of these other World 1 shops that have unique spots as well. It's landed at Jakol right now. See Reset and Sleep Sword and Float, all of which very nice now that he has that Time Mage Crystal. A very quick Pyrobolos fight for Francoise. Summon 5, one of those good items there in Mugo Village that I missed earlier. Although it may have been readily apparent to me if I had also seen Fiery casting Bahamut on Here You Plant, sending it packing here at the Lanka Meteor check. So there's a blue magic spell that is 4 question marks. I think that might be what you're referring to in chat. It is, if I recall correctly, it will just do damage that's not modified by defense, that is equal to the caster's maximum hit points minus their... No, how does that work? It basically does an amount of damage that's the amount of damage that character has taken, if that makes sense. I don't know that that's a great explanation, but basically their max HP versus minus their current HP. So if you have really low HP, you can sometimes dish some damage with that, but it's usually not a terrific damage output for that spell. Fiery is making the Flying Lanka check here. We see Carl. This should be a pretty quick fight. He's got X magic on at least one of his black mages who's hasted with those running shoes. And there's the bracelet. The bracelet, of course, one of 2 items that is required to access X-Death's castle. Meanwhile, Francoise has his Ifrit's Fire and is going to go into the Great Library and find Ifrit. Go figure. A couple of javelin throws and that one is over. Did come away from that first check with the double grip ability, which can be useful if you don't find Knight and have a weapon that you want to use later on that can be held with both hands to increase damage. Second library spot is a panda. So some of the best damage at your disposal here will be that Fire 2 spell that we saw Francoise use. And a Necro fight at the Flying Lanka Ruins check. Francoise makes quick work of a panda. You always like to see Necro earlier in the seed if you can. Fiery does have Bahamut at his disposal, so this should not be an especially challenging fight. It's not a check at which those barriers are going to be casting high-level spells. One cast of Bahamut takes care of business, and now Fiery is going to look to take advantage of Necro's decreased elemental resistance to try to finish this off quickly. See, even a Bolt 2 there doing about 1500 damage. So Necro is down as Francoise makes the Lanka Meteor check. And anti-barrier there for Fiery, so has full access to Exdeath's castle now. There's Pinwheel Ice 3 sword. I saw there among the loot for clearing out Flying Lanka. Mimic, was that Mimic Crystal or Mimic Ability? Mimic Ability. Okay, so that can come in handy on in some occasions. Fiery's going to head to the steamship. Francoise is going to go to Waltz Castle, where there is a hint available, and finds out that Flying Lanka Ruins has the anti-barrier, which we just found out on Fiery's side. Fiery not checking much here in Steamship, is just kind of barreling through it. Checks of convenience of a couple of chests that are along the path. And at the Shiva spot for Francoise, we have Liquid Flame. Should not take much more than about one javelin, and that does do it. It does get Gollum for his efforts. So that's a great summon to have. Abductor, 1 break and done for Fiery in the steamship. And gets the trench page. So the more of those pages you find early, the better off you are. You'll have access to some high-tier loot locations once you get into World 3. And Francoise must have picked up the Waltz Tower key somewhere when I wasn't looking. Because he's in the Waltz Tower. Fiery will take the time to make these Karnak Castle checks. These are higher tier chests generally than you will see anywhere else in World 1. And there can be some very, very useful gear or abilities here. Waltz Tower check is Wing Raptor, which eats a javelin and is gone. That is on the card, and also a falls page for Francoise there. Ooh, Magus Hat Sildra at the Waltz Tower check. Very efficient summon, quite powerful, especially if you happen to get a piece of equipment that will boost wind magic. And Francoise running a bit low on javelins. That's been his main offensive output to this point. He's going to go pick some up in Tool. As Fiery continues to loot here in Karnak Castle, and Excalibur. Not quite sure if we have anybody who's capable of using that yet. I don't think that we do. But if managed to get a job that can use that Excal or find equipped swords in order to use that before Exdeath's castle, that can be extremely useful, as it's a holy elemental weapon, and Exdeath is weak to holy. Yes, so something like if that question is in reference to Sildra, an air knife or a wizard rod will boost Sildra's damage output, double it actually. So very handy. And speaking of handy, X-Magic Flare against Sandworm. A very pesky opponent in many situations. In this case, not so much. Another Lilith Rod, a black suit. It's a nice piece of armor for the black mages we've got running right now. Will boost magic by a little bit. One of the best pieces of defensive gear you can have for a mage. Francoise was through Carl very quickly there at the first Flying Lanka check. And now that Fiery has got some more money to spend, is going to check out these shops in Karnak. We've seen many of these on Francoise's side. There's some good utility spells here. There's also Ninja. But at this juncture, Fiery does not particularly need that. And so we'll pass on it, but does get some mix ingredients from the shopkeeper who appears after you finish off Karnak Castle. There's this extra shopkeeper here. Fiery is actually thinking about Ninja, but ultimately decides against it. Yes, if you're able to find some rods to break, that can be a great strategy. We started with black mages in this seed, but I don't think we really saw any breakable rods for sale anywhere. We've seen many of the shops at this point. There's a lot of overlap between shops in World 2. I think we saw basically all of those checks and didn't see them there. Fiery's checked a lot of the single, non-unique, or single unique shops in some of the towns in World 1. We haven't really seen many rods, so that was a little bit of a detriment in the early going. Francoise does not have Summon, as Fiery did at the Necro spot, but Scrolls are pretty good against Necro. Those barriers have Reflect on, so magic won't be able to take them out directly, but the Scrolls are not reflectable. And being elemental damage, they also do double damage against Necro himself. So it shouldn't be a tough fight, as Fiery's also going to make a Waltz Castle check. Swings, and unfortunately, with that Flame Whip, does some decent damage that would have taken out Liquid Flame, but then the Fire 3 proc healed him back to a state in which he would be alive. That's always a bit of a nuisance in those situations. Happens fairly rarely, you'll see that, where something will heal a boss back out of death. You'll get that sometimes if you have a wall ring on when you go to fight Minotauros. The Holy will be reflected, and then Minna will be healed and won't actually die, and you'll have to keep fighting him. Nevertheless, very quick there with a Flare cast from Fiery to take out Liquid Flame. And now Francoise is into the steamship. Fiery's going to head for Exdeath's Castle, and I think I like this play. There's lots of high-tier loot here. He has access to all areas of Exdeath's Castle, so he can make the boss checks if he wants. And there's plenty of good loot here. We see Ramuh in the basement. Slash has a pretty high chance of success against Ramuh, and so the insta-kill here for Fiery. No key items there, but Ramuh, of course, on the card. So Fiery able to clear that spot. $19,000 gil on the first floor of Exdeath's Castle. Ooh, see Carbuncle Summon in the roulette room, as well as a ribbon. Very nice finds for Fiery. Ooh, Thornlet. Nice when you can sell it, but annoying in the meantime because Optimize will tend to slap that on one of your characters if you change abilities or jobs. So Fiery will check the carbuncle spot first. Oh, and we see goblins. Goblins are here, and X Magic Break is going to one turn this. So these goblins show up in this flag set to replace Neo X-Death, because Neo X-Death is in the shuffle, theoretically, but you don't want to fight him just wherever, so he won't show up. Instead, it's those two guys, and they're just like regular old goblins. You can just blast them and take them out. Vulnerable to basically everything. So Archeo Avis at the Greg check in X-Death's castle for Fiery. This is not an especially challenging fight. It may drag on for a little bit. Flare is nice because non-elemental is good. Archeo Avis has got 5 phases, and in those different phases has some different elemental absorptions. So depending on where you are in the fight, elemental spells can actually backfire. A Flare's pretty good though, being non-elemental and very powerful. Also, the Venom Rod casts Bio, which will introduce HP leak for Archeo Avis. So breaking that rod there, very heads-up play by Fiery. If he knows which phase he's in, then Slash can also instant kill. So very well set up there by Fiery. And you see we'll have a little bit of a glitch here because Archeo Avis kinda sorta died, but didn't really. So we're getting to see some interesting tech today in this fight. He's thinking about it. Maybe. So the reason this happens is that the Slash only killed off one phase of Archeo Avis, so you get kind of the death animation there. The game doesn't really quite know how to handle it. And it's just kind of hovering there, and now another Slash to take out this phase. So Fiery very on top of this fight, as one would expect. And he's descended further into the menu. So King Tycoon will proclaim that it is astounding, and I'm inclined to agree. Francois, remembering that he has Slash on Ferris here, so we'll take out Ramu as well in one shot. Archeo Avis hanging by a thread. I think this cast of Flare will do it, if I've been counting damage correctly. Could it be? Is he actually gone? There he goes again, disintegrating into the menu, and finally done. Job well done there by Fiery to make as probably about as quick work as that fight as one can. Francois left after his basement check, beat Ramu down there in X-Death's castle, and realized that he was short of cabins or tents, so went back to Tool to purchase some of those. Oh, we saw Doom Black Magic up there. I'm not sure that we'd seen. Yeah, we hadn't seen that chest to that point, so Fiery picks that up from that chest off of the Greg room. So here we go. X-Death fight for Fiery. Francoise was able to pick up those light staves earlier, but I'm still not 100% sure that we've found a job that is capable of equipping them to throw to break for X-Death. So we'll see what happens there. I'll be interested to see what Francoise's strategy is going into these various fights. He will skip the roulette room, passes on, I think that was a ribbon and maybe some money. Or there was something else. There was something else there. I don't remember what it was now. I know about the ribbon at least. It looks like Fiery is going a full-on flare against X-Death here. It's good for about 3,000 a shot. The X-Fight Flame Whip doing around 2,400, so that's not bad at all. With Golem at his disposal, he'll be able to nullify X-Death's physical attacks for the most part, as long as he's able to keep that up. And we get Dynamode here, which is always a little bit unfavorable, but the damage output is good enough that the race will continue for Fiery in terms of trying to damage X-Death down before X-Death can try to do the same to him. Francoise will just pass turns to his Slash Ninja. Take out the goblins in one go. Fiery has dispatched X-Death in fairly short order, as one would expect. So now has access to World 3, the various checks in World 3. And Fiery is going to go straight to one of those World 3 checks. This is Tool Pass. Ride Bucko up to Tool. So Slash actually is reasonably powerful. It's a powerful skill. It's basically an insta-kill against everything that's vulnerable to being taken out. That's vulnerable to instant death and is not... doesn't worry about whether the boss is heavy. If it's vulnerable to instant death, then Slash can work. It can be that powerful in the original, but because you don't have access to it until you fight a lot of these bosses until you've already fought many of the bosses that are weak to it. You don't get to take advantage of it all the time in vanilla. Speaking of Slash, Biblos is one such boss who can be defeated with Slash. So Tool Pass is a very trivial check. Fiery will be through that quickly. Francoise, you can see here, using essentially the same strategies that Fiery did, making sure he knows which phase he's in so that he can insta-kill the phases you can do that against. And so Archeoavis is down for Francoise as well. Unfortunately, I didn't catch the reward for Tool Pass if there was one. There was at least an item. You'll always get something from the bosses. It just might not necessarily be that good. And Fiery now going to make the World 3 Bal Castle check. We'll head through Jakol Cave. I find this personally to be an underrated check. A lot of racers will fade this check until a little bit later in the seed, but of course the parties are very powerful now too, so that plays into the consideration somewhat as well. So Fiery can assuredly take whatever happens to be here. And the Deed is confident enough in that fact not to take the save check, and with good reason, because this is a boss that should go down to 1 Phoenix down. There's a Rune Axe and the Hear You Call for Fiery. T-Rex, one of the required bosses. You see over there in the card in his shortened name form, and Fiery's going to take the Hear You Call and go immediately to the Zeza Fleet check here in World 2. Meanwhile, Francoise's check, pardon me, not check, but fight against X-Death is going pretty well. We did see him pick up those light staves earlier, as I mentioned, and he does have a chemist at his disposal. So those light staff breaks doing a considerable amount of damage, and about 2,000 a shot for each javelin that he throws on his ninjas as well. So this should be a similarly fast fight to the one that Fiery experienced, and as an added bonus there, got a Fire 3 cast on a ninja that must be wearing a flame ring to heal up Bart's there. So that was very fortuitous. Magisa was at Zeza Fleet, and so one slash and done there for Fiery. Comes away with... Boy, I saw what the key item was and I've already forgotten. Was that the sub key? Okay, I thought that was maybe what it was, but I didn't want to mark it until I had confirmation. So there are 4 checks in the game that require the sub key. One of them is in World 2, that's Barrier Tower. There are 3 of them here in World 3. One of them is Sunken Waltz Tower, which you can access even if you haven't sunken it. And Fiery, one of the great trench finders in the game, lands a little bit south of it, and is perhaps disappointed to find that he has landed a bit south of it, but nevertheless is headed toward trench. So there are 2 bosses here, one at the front door. That's all of the front door of the page checks are 10,000 hit point checks. And in addition to that, there's some good loot in trench, as well as a couple of shops and some hints. So this is a high value location, and Fiery is going to prioritize it here. Califisteri bars the way inside, but Callow does not have Reflect up yet. And so a couple of flares will be good for around 5,500 damage in the opening turn for Fiery. Francois on his way to the tool pass check. Finds Biblos here. Does not slash though, is just going with conventional warfare, and unfortunately Biblos now has armor up, so those javelins doing a little bit less damage, so he'll turn to Bahamut instead. So no item check at these front door pages for the shrines in World 3, but nevertheless, Callow is on the card, so Fiery will be able to mark off that spot. Of course, we're playing Blackout Bingo this week, so the players will have to defeat all 25 bosses on that bingo card you see on screen in order to finish the seed. And because there are 50 bosses in the game, that very frequently means that there's a lot of full clearing going on in these seeds. Fiery with some optimal routing here in Trench comes up with 20,000 gil out of that chest. There's all of those buttons will open a pit beneath you except for one, and that one that Fiery clicked opened the chest at the top of that room, the northmost part of that room, and then was able to use the nearest button close to that. Let's see, we have a sandworm bait in World 2. Great Trench has the Mirage Radar, so guess what? Fiery is going to come out of here with a Mirage Radar, assuming that the boss is not especially difficult. Grab a couple of ice rods here. Those can be handy for spell boosting as well as breaking. Also a white mage crystal, so he'll pick that up. And we'll see which boss is guarding that Mirage Radar that we just got a hint about here in Great Trench. Fiery having a little bit of a careful think about his party composition there. There aren't many jobs available to either of our racers at the moment. Fiery does have access to Time Mage, White Mage, Trainer. Did not purchase Ninja as Francois did, because he did not see that until much later in World 1. And we have an Odin at the Great Trench check. And interestingly enough, Fiery had originally set up his party with, I think, Sword Slap and something else, and then switched back to Trainer. Now, the thing is, he does have Break Blade, and that is a skill that will finish this fight immediately. But didn't have Magic Sword equipped on anybody going into that one. So he took the quick reset. This will actually be a little bit faster than having to try to take that fight. At this spot, Odin's very powerful, and it's entirely possible that one True Edge will just, or I suppose not True Edge, what's the name of the skill? I can't remember it off the top of my head. Yes, Zensatsuken, which I am assuredly not pronouncing correctly. But nevertheless, Break Blade. So he's got running shoes on his Magic Sword user, so he'll be able to activate Break Blade immediately. Then just needs one turn of combat with that same character to end this immediately. Odin can be turned to stone, but has very high magic evade. Break Blade bypasses that, however. So that's it. Odin had the right of it. This is it. Mass Immune and the Mirage Radar. We knew that would be here from that Trench hint. So got the immediate Mirage Radar. Of course, Mirage is very useful for its many excellent high-tier shops, but in addition to that, you also need access to Mirage to get to the Bahamut check in World 3. So virtually required in this flag set, looking for Blackout Boss Hunt Bingo. Let's see what we've got here. Bolt 3. Quick and X Zone. A couple of excellent time magic spells. Level 3 Flare. Life 2. Some great magic there in the opening shops here in the inn. Francois going to take out the Zeza Fleet check immediately as well. We've seen very similar strategies from both racers here. Much different progression in the terms of the way that they're conducting their checks and the order in which they're doing them. But really still anybody's race. Fiery seems like he might have a little bit of an edge here. I will warn that as I am both commentating and tracking today, there are likely some things that I have missed so far in your on-screen tracker, and I do apologize for that. We see a chicken knife here, and Fiery is going to linger on it for a moment. Keep that in mind. There's not much that he has seen at this point that would be able to make the best possible use of that weapon. He does have X-Fight, of course. But he's going to take a look at the other shop first, and he is going to come back to pick up that chicken knife. North Mountain is on the path to the void. I do not actually recall what the first North Mountain check was. We saw Francois make that check earlier. We see Knight there in this last couple of shops, as well as an Assassin Dagger. Fiery's still got plenty of stuff to sell, so he is by no means cash poor after making all those purchases. Yes, it is entirely possible that Francois has Tablet 1 and 3. So it looks like Fiery has picked up a Brave Blade here too. He's going to go Knight with Galuf and X-Fight. And then we'll probably see him go to the Black Chocobo, which is what he's doing, to make both North Mountain checks at once. I think we saw a little bit of menuing there. Fiery rigging for Bolt 3. He does have access to that spell now, as well as a Thunder Rod. And any of those elemental rods also boost spell casting. It doubles the, I believe doubles, or perhaps increases by 50%. I'm not entirely sure on that, but it does boost damage from spells of the same element when you have one of those equipped. So we're actually just going to see one Bolt 3 here to take care of Greg 1 in the first North Mountain check. Francois is also well into Trench, so has defeated Califasteri and is doing a little bit of shopping. Taking this opportunity to sell off a lot of the sellable items that he's picked up. And we have Galura at the top in the Bahamut check. This should be quite fast. One break and Galura is gone. Big Guard Blue Magic, always nice to see, as well as another progression item, the Elder Branch. Fiery is going to follow that breadcrumb immediately. Elder Branch grants access to more forest, and consequently is a requirement in order to get to Fork Tower, which we know is on the path to the Void in this seed. We got a hint about that earlier. Of course, in Blackout Boss Bingo, Fork Tower is likely a required clear anyway, and unless two bosses that aren't required just happen to show up there. Oh, dark matter in one of the more forest chests. Always nice to see that mixed component. Can be used to mix up a death potion, which is very handy against certain bosses who are not immune to instant death. Francoise, unfortunately, has not healed before this Odin fight. Took a lot of damage from those damage tiles on his way through, and so is going to get true edged. But now knowing the boss that's there, can perhaps re-gear, re-equip a little bit. Did have Magic Sword on one of his characters, so as long as he can last around in that fight, he'll be fine. And we see the triplets in more forest. So, Fiery thinking carefully about this. You have to handle this fight somewhat carefully, because if any one of the triplets dies, then after a short while it will be brought back to life. You have to kill them all three at the same time, and when they do come back to life that way, they cast the very potent Delta attack. So what Fiery is doing here is he's using his Blue Mage to try to cast Deathclaw. And Deathclaw reduces an enemy to sub 10 hit points. And so if he's able to land Deathclaw on each of the three triplets, then he can just take them out with an AoE attack and then kill them at the same time. Odin is preferred for this fight, but racers don't have Odin yet as a summon. So Fiery is going to re-equip for this fight a little bit to try to make it go a little bit faster. Thinks he can save some time here. He is going to equip Blue Magic on at least one more character, as Francoise gets his Break Blade out in order to take out Odin. So now Francoise has the Mirage Radar as well. So take two for Fiery against the triplets. Does have Blue Magic on 3 characters, so we'll continue trying to land Deathclaws against all 3 triplets. Has it now on 2. And that's really interesting. I just happened to notice there that all of Fiery's characters appear to have 1,001 hit points. That's not especially common. Deathclaw now landed on all 3, so one cast of Bahamut guaranteed to take everybody out in one pass. And that's the way you've got to handle it against triplets. So a very well organized fight there by Fiery. An adept user of Blue Magic. We'll take out triplets without much hassle. Is one of the bosses on our card, but no key item out of there. Only a handful of key items left. And now Fiery says, you know what? We're pretty strong here. We know Fork Tower is required. He might be able to get his... We know Fork Tower's on the path to the Void. And Fiery is, I'm sure, well aware of that, so maybe thinking if he can get his 4th tablet, he can do a bunch of looting in the Void and perhaps even just clear the Void at this juncture. But we're still looking for pages as well. The only 2 that we've seen so far are the Trench page and the Falls page, so since Fiery knows this is Path to the Void, it seems like a logical check to do next, and he's more than powerful enough to take out the bosses here. Depending on who they are, might have to take another run at it after setting up the party a little bit differently, but generally speaking, this laid on into a seed with a lot of powerful abilities and jobs should be in pretty good shape. And I think I see a dual-wielding chicken knife dancer for Francoise here. That can be extraordinarily powerful. Francoise is the only one who's been running ninja in the seed, and I don't know that Fiery had access to the two-handed skill in order to enable characters to dual wield. But 2 chicken knives on a dancer can be absolutely devastating when that sword dance comes out. We're unlikely to see those chicken knives in this fight, though, because we're dealing with Galura, who has about 100 different ways to instantaneously kill. We saw the break from Fiery earlier. We'll see the Doom come out here for Francoise. And he'll get Big Guard and that Elder Branch as his reward. All right, Shiva on the right-hand side, the first check. And looks like either an Ice Shield or a Coral Ring in play there for Fiery. Because that was... Well, I don't know if Coral Ring doesn't actually absorb ice, does it? So it must have been an Ice Shield. So we're going to see some blue mage strats here. We saw Dark Shock come out against Shiva. That halves Shiva's level, which will decrease her damage output, but also potentially make her vulnerable to other blue magic spells. And we will see immediately Fiery goes to level 5 Doom, and Shiva is gone. So 1 Dark Shock and a level 5 Doom there. We've seen some death by math strats today. And Fiery trying to get these commanders out of the way as quickly as possible. They're vulnerable to instant death by a variety of means. He'll cast the Quick spell, which gives the Time Mage 2 consecutive turns to dish 2 X zones and banish those 2 commanders to the Cleft of Dimension. And that knight, Kara as a knight right now, has absorbed 2 attacks that would have taken out Ferris. So the number divided by 2 that gets you a multiple of 5 that wasn't already. The idea is some bosses like Shiva. I don't actually remember Shiva's exact level, but it's a level that when you divide it by 2, the game will actually round down as opposed to rounding up. So when you use Dark Shock, some bosses that have a given level will be rounded down to a multiple of 5. Hence, that's why it works in that spot. And welcome in with that raid. We appreciate you stopping by today. We're playing some Final Fantasy V Career Day Randomizer. We've got a quarterfinal race in the Career Day Variety Tournament between FieryBlizzard and FrancoiseHarpie. I'm Archfield Monk, and we're pretty deep into this one. We're playing some Blackout Boss Bingo today, so our players both have to take out 25 of the game's 50 bosses in order to finish this one off. We saw Fiery get Odin there on the right-hand side of Fork Tower in the first fight and has a rather optimal party for the second fight. Merugine is running 2 black mages here. And so is just going to dish out some flare casts to try to get this one over with as quickly as possible. Shiva was the boss check. The Odin Esper was picked up on the right-hand side of Fork Tower. So apologies if I did not quite state that accurately. Francoise taking a different tack here against the triplets at More Forest. Will go with conventional damage using Sildra and Bahamut. And there is the 4th tablet. So we knew Fork Tower was on the path to the Void. And it was a direct hint because Fiery's got hold of his last tablet now. He has full access to the Void if he wants it. Francoise makes pretty quick work of triplets there in More Forest. Interestingly, I think Fiery maybe forgot to mark that one off on his card, but when he sees it pop up for Francoise, marks it off immediately. I was wondering if that was going to happen. He, of course, had finished triplets check a while ago and just forgot to mark it on the card. Now, Fiery has not found Ifrit's Fire yet, so just made that first library check. Isn't able to progress to the spot in the back. And is going to do some sub-checks instead. He'll head to World 2 to do Barrier Tower, it looks like. And Francoise has the Falls page. Does not have the Trench page, so he'll put that sub-key to a slightly different use than Fiery was able to earlier. He'll check out the Falls location as Story Falls instead. And guarding the front door is Leviathan. This is actually a pretty good spot to find Leviathan. Leviathan can be a very dangerous boss. It's better to see him here than at the Void, for sure. And Francoise is content just to pass turns to that dual-wielding chicken knife dancer he's got going with Kara there. Because lands a sword dance in this fight is over immediately. About 19,000 damage there, which is roughly twice as much as he actually needed to do to finish that fight. And taking a look now at Barrier Tower, we see Stalker. And Fiery is going to reset to reorganize his party to handle this fight a little bit differently. There are a couple of different strategies here. Be interested to see what Fiery opts to do. He's going to slap Mix on his second character and Blue on his third. And we're going to get some more blue mage strats here, going with Dark Shock against Stalker. I think I just saw a Summoner Crystal for Francoise. Both players already have Summon level 5, of course, so not as important as it might be. But we'll get 2 Dark Shocks here, followed by a group Sleep cast. Stalker is vulnerable to sleep, can demonstrate some odd behaviors sometimes when he is asleep, but by and large is a much better way to handle Stalker than otherwise would be. And now we see the Samson power coming out, so 2 Dark Shocks into a Samson power, so some level manipulation going on here for sure. Another Dark Shock, and I think this is all probably to set up a level 5 Doom. So if you want to know how to take out Stalker most expeditiously, you just saw a masterclass in it right there from FieryBlizzard. Using some level manipulation, actually knocking Stalker's level in half, then increasing it by 10, then knocking it in half again to get to level 5 Doom. And he's going to get the Sandworm bait for his trouble and be able to mark Stalker off the board. Fiery will follow that key item, the Sandworm bait, straight to World 1 to make that check, and we see Carbuncle is the boss waiting for Francoise at the bottom of the Falls Shrine. Carbuncle's a little bit tricky. Even these level 2 magics that Carbuncle casts are very powerful. That said, there's only about 4 of them that come out before Carbuncle enters a phase in which they are immune to basically everything, and you saw there Francois waiting for a little bit of a pause in the battle gauge before sending out Shote to finish Carbuncle in one shot. And the Pyramid page, another page very likely required due to the nature of Blackout Boss Bingo, picked up there by Francoise. So a nice key item find. Go-Go, taken out there by FieryBlizzard at the Sandworm bait check. You get to see the quick kill on him today instead of having to wait through his entire spiel. No key item for Fiery there at the Sandworm bait check. And Fiery does not have the Falls page yet. I don't quite recall where that was. So he's going to make the Sunken Waltz Tower check instead. Now he's got all 4 tablets, and he's got many of the key items. So depending on what boss he finds down here, there's still some rougher ones left. You really don't want to see Guardians at this spot. There's probably a couple of other bosses out there who are tricky as well, but many of the bosses who are left are probably eminently beatable even at this very high hit point check. We know now Halicarnasso is at the front door of Pyramid as well, and actually Twintania here at Sunken Walls. Able to get Big Guard up immediately, so this fight shouldn't be too bad. Twintania, kind of similar to the Carbuncle fight we just saw, has a phase in which she becomes weak to most everything. So as long as you can tank some damage and wait that out, then you'll have an instant kill through most means possible. Doom spell, break spell, really whatever you want to use. And Twintania will do 5 attacks before that phase starts, where she'll start charging up for Giga Flare. And you see Fiery using a technique here where he's just going to let his cursor hang on Twintania until it falls back into his menu. That's how he knows the phase has changed. And then Twintania becomes level 0 and immune to, vulnerable to basically everything. So level 5 Doom works there even. And will get the very expeditious kill for the shrine page, so that possibly a required check as well for Fiery there. So we've seen some very divergent routing from both of our racers here. It's hard to get a beat on who is necessarily ahead, but I will say Fiery has been making such quick work of some of these bosses. We'll see if Francoise is able to similarly deal with Stalker in a very quick fashion such as Fiery did. That would certainly be valuable to him here as he is in Barrier Tower. Fiery doing some mop-up work. He saw Antlion at this check very early and just noped out of it. Was not a valuable check to him because Antlion doesn't reward experience. So early in the seed when he first checked this spot, opted out of it and is going to pick it up now. One cast of Flare will send Antlion scurrying to wherever Antlion scurries. And that was Ifrit's Fire. So now, having already made the first library check, Fiery will be able to make the second and continue on his way. Francoise, meanwhile, has entered the Stalker fight. Not sure that he's running any blue mages at the moment, so he's going to go get his Golem up for physical defense, and then resort to some summoning here. We'll call out Sildra. This will invoke some counters from Stalker, so it's not necessarily an optimal way to go about this, but I think his party is more than strong enough to just continue dealing damage at this spot. Might have to do some healing here because those blaze casts cause the HP leak status, so HP will just continue draining away for a little bit. So you have to be wary of that if you're a little low. Francoise hoping to get that double chicken knife sword dance out on the real Stalker instead of a fake Stalker, but only really has a 1 in 4 chance of that. And you don't really get to feel around to see which one it is. Does get it though, finds out which one is the real one. So those 2 chicken knives doing the damage cap against Stalker, and that's just about all the hit points this check has at Barrier Tower. So Stalker is down. That was a reasonably fast Stalker fight too for not being set up for blue magic. So job well done there by Francoise to get that done in a quick fashion. Fiery's got the Waltz Tower key now out of the second library check. So he'll be going to Waltz Tower right away. And one might expect that with the Sandworm bait in hand, Francoise is also going to go do that check, and that is exactly what he's going to go do. Immediate doom from Fiery to take out Wing Raptor. Wing Raptor is heavy but is weak, is not immune to instant death, so anything like Doom or True Edge can take Wing Raptor out. And we're going to get the double chicken knife sword dance on Go-Go. And Go-Go goes. Like to see him at some lower HP checks if possible so that you can actually take him out as opposed to his vanilla location where he has so much HP that he's virtually invincible. And with the Shrine page in hand, Fiery's going to go make the Shrine check, and we see Shote at the front door. This is a great spot to see Shote. Shote can be a bit annoying, but we're going to see some more death by math strats here for Fiery. He'll use level 2 Old and possibly try to get a level 5 Doom. The Old spell basically makes an enemies, or anyone's, if it lands on a character, the old spell will make a character's level continue to tick down by 1, each tick of the ATB. And so you have roughly a 1 in 5 chance to just fling a level 5 Doom out there and take care of an enemy who's been inflicted with old. And you saw there Fiery get a very quick kill on Shote, who is an annoying boss, to say the least, if not a dangerous one at later checks. And so that can be a bit of an issue sometimes, but Fiery, well versed in these blue mage strats, is able to take out Shote very quickly and proceed into the shrine. And we see Francoise taking out Hallie here at the front door of the pyramid. And Fiery, I think, feels in full go mode at this point. He's not bothering to make any chest checks. The chests, of course, in the shrine can be trap chests anyway. So usually better to skip those if you're in a bit of a hurry. You don't want to have to reset out of an invisible fight, which is very tricky and very time-consuming, to say the least. And here's Siren, one of our required bosses. Fiery will get Breakout there and finish that in 1 turn. No key item there. I think the only thing Fiery is still looking for are a couple of pages, as well as that big bridge key. Now, Francoise has also skipped most of the looting in the pyramid. Just going to head straight to the boss check. Both parties are quite powerful at this point. Oh, we see Guardians here. This is actually a reasonably good spot for Guardians, too. You don't want to see them in the Deep Void. They can be very fast, and they have powerful spells, so even though their HP is divided up between the 4 of them at any given check, that can be a difficult fight. And Francoise does not have Odin yet. Odin can finish this fight in 1 pass, but Fiery is the only player who's completed the Fork Tower to this juncture. And so that early Fork Tower check will probably pay dividends if he comes in here to do the pyramid check later. Guardians is one of the required bosses on the card, so we know both players will have to pass through here before the end of the seed. But Francoise is just going to sweep through this with several Bahamut casts. Be able to check that check off and pick up the big bridge key. So that was one of our last key items at that check. Francoise headed to the big bridge, and we found Titan there. Not one of the required bosses, but possibly blocking progression from his perspective. So did take him out. Quick fight, not a huge issue. And Fiery has made his way very quickly through the Waterfall Shrine, and is going to wait out Carbuncle here. So Fiery closing in. Fairly safe to say at this point that I think he has a bit of an edge, already having cleared Fork Tower, so he's got all of his tablets. Does seem to be fairly securely a couple of checks ahead of Francois at this point. And many of the bosses that we see left on our card, we're getting kind of down to the last few that we might expect to see here. So a lot of the bosses that you see on that card, Omniscient is the worst of them, but the rest really aren't that bad. Golem is quite easy. Apocalypse can be taken out with one Exploder cast. Greg 3 is able to be instant death, so you can end that fight very quickly. Timmy, Adamantoise, also a boss that can be taken out with, say, a cast of Odin or a Death Potion or level 5 Doom. Lots of different means, and the gargoyles themselves are not especially challenging. So we might have a pretty clean route to a faster finish in this one. It just remains to be seen where all of these bosses are, and a lot of them are going to be in the void at this point. We've seen many of our other checks. Fiery's going to take care of Pyramid, and Francois is headed to Sunken Walls. He's going to get his charging for Giga Flare message from Twintania. Doesn't land Shote, unfortunately, and Mega Flare is going to come out. Oh no. That's very unfortunate there. Shote, there is a slight chance that Shote isn't going to work there because of Magic Evade reasons. So just a little bit unlucky there for Francois. Usually in that weakness phase, Twintania will go down to basically everything, as long as it's an instant death attack. But didn't quite get it there, and we'll have to take another attempt at Sunken Walls, as Fiery takes care of Halicarnasso, the front door of Pyramid, and makes his way inside. I think, to answer the question in chat, that Breakblade would work there, and I think it's also possibly guaranteed to work because the Spellblades bypass magic evasion. So if you're able to get that on one of your characters early in the fight and have that available, but I think the character that died for him, I think Bart's up there at the top, is the one who's currently running Spellblade. So the fact that Bart's was the character who died during that initial Twintania onslaught might be the reason that he wasn't able to get that going there, but could be mistaken about that too. It looks like he's just going to wait this out to try to summon again. And in fairness, Shote should work here, well over half the time. Now, as I pointed out earlier, Fiery has come into this Guardians fight with Odin. And yes, Francois does get the Shote proc there. Manages to get that to activate and take out Twintania. We'll get his shrine page. But as I was talking about with his Guardian fight for Fiery, he does have Odin here because he's already completed Fork Tower. So it is possible that he'll get a true edge, and that'll take out the Guardians. So a quick Guardians fight for Fiery. And Fiery's got all of the progression items at his disposal now. Is going to Warp Shard immediately off the top of the pyramid, and I expect will head to do one of his remaining checks in World 2, now that he has that big bridge key. And knowing that he has no progression items left, he is able to reset immediately out of that Titan fight because Titan's not on the bingo card, so he doesn't have to beat that boss. So we're not going to get a full clear today from Fiery. And I think right now he's gearing up to proceed into the void. He knows the rest of his bosses have to be here. There are 7 boss checks in the void, well, actually, I think there might be 8. Yes, there are 8 total, including the Neo X Death spot, into which one of the other bosses has been shuffled in this flag set. So 6 of 8 in the void. Fiery's possibly going to get to skip some bosses today. It depends on where the rest of these required ones are located. You have to beat, I think, 6 of the bosses before you get to the first one that's optional. That's at the Necrophobia spot in the Deep Void. So he'll have to probably plow through one boss that it is not required before this is all said and done. It depends on whether or not one of the bosses is at the Ned spot, the Neo X Death spot. And I note here that Francoise is through the shrine. So finishes off another couple of checks there. As Fiery makes his way into the Void Forest, you'll note he's not doing any looting here. Already feels more than powerful enough to take on the bosses that we have remaining. I'm not sure which other ones are still out there that aren't on the card, but I would expect with the party he's running, he's in really good shape here. And we're going to see some more death by math against Greg 3 here. Having the level first. Greg 3 is level 29, so cutting that in half will send him to level 15, and then level 5 Doom will take care of business. Actually, no, Greg 3, I'm sorry. Greg 3 is 31. And so cutting it in half will send him to level 15. Because that will always round down. See the slick little waterfall shortcut from Fiery. Francoise is now heading into Fork Tower. And we see a second consecutive Greg. Greg 4 here in the Void Library check. And Greg 4 is going to hit pretty hard at this spot. Can actually be a little bit of trouble. Yes, battle on the big book. Well done. It looks like Fiery is setting up basically for damage output here. Yes, instead of trying to manipulate this fight another way, we'll go to Big Guard, which is very helpful for avoiding the status effects as well as cutting in half any damage that Greg does. Getting Golem up will block a certain amount of physical damage as well, and with X-Fight and a Brave Blade on his Knight, can dish about 6,000 damage around. Is really just hoping to do enough damage to finish this fight before all of the cinematic phases of it, because that will slow you down a little bit. Oh, and just right before he could get that Bolt 3 out, which would have been boosted, I saw him put a Thunder Rod on that Black Mage. Got turned to a Toad, and unfortunately Toads can't cast Black Magic. Francoise is having to set up a little bit differently to handle Fork Tower. Had to reset out of his first fight there. Didn't actually see how that went, unfortunately, but evidently not well enough that he felt comfortable proceeding, or else perhaps just didn't pass the check at all. So we'll have to head back into Fork Tower. Not an uncommon occurrence. Meanwhile, on Fiery's side, Greg's imitation Excalibur, the Excalibur, has failed. And X-Death will intervene to send Greg 4 to the Void, which is fascinating because Greg 4 is already in the Void. That fight was enough of a nuisance that Fiery's not going to take any chances here, and based on the progression of his bingo card, he's probably reasonably assured that he's ahead here. He's through the Greg 3 fight. Francoise has not marked that one off yet, so he knows he's got a little bit of time here to use. I'm not sure. There's at least one more boss left that's not on the card. I want to say there are 5 on there. We're through 2 Void bosses, so there are 6 total left. Whatever that outstanding boss is might be a little bit trickier. And we know Omni is still out there. That's not a fun fight, but definitely doable at this juncture. And Fiery has access to Arrow 3, and Omniscient is weak to Wind. So we'll see Arrow 3 come out from his blue mages, and we'll see just some more conventional magic come out. Otherwise, the trick with the Omniscient fight, if you're not familiar, if you use anything other than magic on Omniscient, Omniscient will counter with the Time Mage reset spell, and that will just reset the fight back to its beginning state, and you'll have to start all over again. So the only thing you can do is use magic, or, if possible, you can use something like Mute Spellblade, as we see Francoise barely squeak by the first Fork Tower check. But you can use Mute Spellblade, and that will always land, and when it does, Omni can't cast Reset anymore. It will also stop his death counter from triggering. Interestingly enough, though, being turned to a frog earlier stopped Fiery from casting. Being turned into a very tiny person does not stop Fiery from casting. Size still enables you to use your magic spells in Final Fantasy V. Francoise working on the second half of Fork Tower here with this Merigine fight. And it seems to be going pretty well. Having Bahamut available for this fight is very useful, as having Flare was for Fiery, because Merigine will sometimes change resistances and absorptions As you see there, that bounced Bolt 3 off that wall ring actually healed her in that instant, so having non-elemental damage like Bahamut can be very useful. And Fiery, with that Mute Blade shot, will take out Omniscient and is one step closer to completing his board. We'll also get welcome access to the save point. Now that Omni is gone, Fiery is enabled to narrow his focus a little bit because he knows which bosses are possibly left. This Golem fight should be pretty fast. That Bone Dragon that you see at the top there, it can be turned to stone, and so Break will take care of it in one shot. And then it's just a matter of dealing quite a lot of damage to this zombie dragon that remains. But Francois, now that he has all 4 tablets, likely feels a bit behind, and so he's going to storm into the void here. As far as I know, or can recall, he has not completed Trench yet. I don't have the Trench page marked. That doesn't mean that he doesn't have it. He's done a lot of checks. I suspect that he might. But if he feels behind here and he hasn't made those checks yet, then he's definitely going to head into the void, seeing that Fiery is marking off some bosses in rather rapid succession here. Gets through that Golem fight with limited difficulty. Which is to say no difficulty at all. And the Halicarnasso check for Fiery. Likely to turn up one of the 3 bosses left that he needs. And it is indeed the Gargoyles. Level 3 Flare is very effective here. You want to take out both Gargoyles at once. This is a similar mechanic to the Triplets fight that we saw earlier, if you were here for that one, where you want to take them both out at the same time. Because if you don't, then one will automatically revive, has an innate ability to do that, and they'll just make nuisances of themselves. So you want to do roughly equal damage to both if you can. And we'll see the level 3 Flares come out to do exactly that. Another cast, I think, might do it, but it could take 4 at this spot. Relatively high HP check, and that those hit points are divided between the 2 Gargoyles at this spot. So Fiery is like to keep close track of his damage here. This spot does have 33,000 hit points. Roughly. And Fiery had that counted to the point where he felt comfortable using X-Fight to finish them off. However, there must be something still lurking out there that he's a little bit concerned about. As Francois completes the Greg 3 fight quite quickly and is on his way toward the Void Library as well. I'm not sure which boss is left. I wouldn't necessarily have expected Fiery to go back to save there unless there was something. Oh, you know what? Is Bahamut still out there? Have we seen Bahamut all seed? If Bahamut's at the Twintania spot, that's a very challenging fight. I don't remember seeing Bahamut, but maybe I'm just mistaken. Oh, there's Bahamut. Yeah, so he'll reset immediately. He'll have to get past Bahamut, and this is actually, once he does that, he knows he's free and clear because Adamantoise and Apocalypse are both very simple, but the Bahamut fight, not so much. Very challenging fight, and I'm not sure. One of the most common strategies that you'll see against Bahamut, especially at high hit point check spots, is using the Bard ability Love Song, but I see at that inspection of FieryBlizzard's menu that he does not have access to Sing, therefore cannot use that strategy at this spot. He's going to have to use Big Guard. He's going to have to try to whittle, do as much damage as he can against Bahamut as quickly as possible. And it looks like he's rigging for X Magic. That's a good way to dish a lot of damage at once, especially if you can boost that with rods. So, not a boss that you would like to see here. I was kind of wondering who was still lurking out there, and I'm surprised I even realized that Bahamut was still out there. But this is definitely a difficult boss fight at this spot. The Twintania spot has 50,000 hit points. So not trivial by any means, even though our parties are very strong at this point, due to the fact that they've had to clear a lot of boss checks and pick up a lot of levels. This is still a very dangerous fight. Looks like about 4,200 damage a turn for that X-Fight Brave Blade. Level 3 Flare will also work on Bahamut here. It's about 3,600. Each of those boosted Bolt 3s was also doing about 3,600 damage. So I'd say we're about, let's see, 72, 62. We're actually about halfway through the fight already at this point. You really just want to dish as much damage as possible as quickly as you can, and that's what Fiery is doing right here. He's got those running shoes on his boosted Black Mage with that Bolt 3 spell. He's doing considerable damage with that. And here in Final Fantasy V Career Day, to answer the question in chat, depending on the boss location, if a boss is shuffled into a higher tier spot, they'll sometimes gain some different abilities. You'll see bosses use different things than they might normally in vanilla. And that was one such case there, Atomic Ray coming out from Bahamut. Very powerful fire elemental spell. But that said, Fiery has managed to race Bahamut down, will not have to face a Mega Flare, and he is going to save here. There are only 2 boss checks left. We know they have to be Adamantoise and Apocalypse in some order, both at the Necrophobia spot and at Neo X Death. So we'll see Blue Magic come back into the mix here, because that will be a 1-turn kill for Apocalypse, assuming the Exploder is available, and I think it is. Shinryu and Omega, neither of them are shuffled into the boss shuffle in Career Day, so you won't have to worry about them fortuitously. Francoise, meanwhile, has, I think that's Omni's death counter, although sometimes at some spots Omni can cast Flare natively. But that was in fact the death counter, so Francoise threw that check and knows that he is behind at this point, and probably knows, based on the bosses that are remaining, that barring something remarkable happening, he is probably going to lose to Fiery in this race, because Adamantoise and Apocalypse both can be taken out in 1 turn. Speaking of turns, though, I think that was maybe not the spot Fiery thought he was at, because I didn't expect him to check a chest in the void at all, and he checked that one. Got ×6 for his trouble, but the real left turn that he wants is up here at the Necrophobia spot. And so he'll go there instead, and we'll find one of our 2 remaining bosses, Apocalypse. Apocalypse is a blue mage. If you're not familiar with this strategy, you can teach him various blue magic spells by casting them on him. And by teaching him Exploder, he decides that's a good idea, and uses it himself to self-destruct and one-shot himself. So Fiery will be able to revive the 2 characters that he had to sacrifice in order to get the one-shot kill at that spot, and now he'll be headed toward the Ned spot. In all likelihood to find Adamantoise. I don't believe we've left any checks on the table, so this should be it. And Fiery just checked the wrong spot, so I think maybe Francoise knows in which order he'll find these 2 now. Level 5 Doom comes out for Fiery. That's an immediate kill on Adamantoise. And that's the last square for FieryBlizzard, who's going to finish in first place in today's quarterfinal race and move on to the semifinals with an official racetime.gg time of 2 hours, 13 minutes, and 47 seconds. Very, very well played today by FieryBlizzard. Really put on a clinic for us in the use of various blue mage strats against a lot of these bosses, and in doing so finished this seed quite quickly. This is a really good time for a blackout boss bingo seed in this flag set, and just demonstrated all of his immense knowledge of the game and getting through it as quickly as he did. So very well done to FieryBlizzard today. Move on to the semifinals. We've got 3 of our 4 spots booked here in the Career Day tournament. Only 1 match left that'll come later today. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We'll see if Fiery is able to come join us. And we are joined by the winner of today's race, FieryBlizzard. Job very well done. That was quite impressive.
Thank you. That ending was scary because I was just like, I looked at what bosses I had left. I'm like, okay, they're either Blue Mage or Bahamut. And I see Bahamut at Twintania. I'm just like, well, I'm gonna reset and put up X magic on everybody and just see how much damage I can do very, very quickly.
Yeah, I was starting to wonder. I knew there had to be 1 boss left, and I was kind of thinking back. I hadn't been tracking which ones we'd seen, but I thought, Fiery went back to save right there. There must be somebody really dangerous left, and started to think about it. I was like, you know what, Bahamut might still be out there. And sure enough, there he was at the Twintania spot, so you never like to see that.
No, especially when the other 2 would have been free, just because Blue Mage were both instant kills for them, so... But yeah, I mean, that one, our routes must have been vastly different, considering the squares that were lighting up between the 2 of us.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see. It was actually kind of difficult to keep track of who was where at any given time because it was pretty divergent. For instance, just off the top of my head, Francoise made the first North Mountain check pretty early. You made the first library check pretty early as well, just kind of looking for key items and so forth, I think. But it was really interesting to see the routes develop just as they kind of went along, and it was fairly divergent. You don't necessarily expect to see that in this flag set and in this mode.
No, but they always converge at the end on this mode, so...
Yeah, you're gonna get to the same place one way or the other. So kind of take us through your strategy in the seed. You were finding some good hints early. You knew some places to go for tablets. Was that kind of a... I didn't actually see if there was a Moogle waterway hint, but given the fact that you went there pretty much right away to see what the boss was, I figure there was a hint for a progression there or a tablet.
Yeah, there was a Ruger. The Ruger hint was Moogle waterway was Path to the Void. And then there was another hint saying that the Moogle suit was at Walls Meteor. Really, for most of the time, I was not terribly concerned about the tablets. I wasn't going to make more than one trip in the sealed. With the sealed was kind of lackluster. But I was looking for the Baron hints, although they although ultimately it didn't come into that much of a play. The burning areas, by the time I got that hint, I already had done all the burning areas, or I had to go through 4 because I was out of options. Or the other one was bridges, and of course bridges was, I got the big bridge key as my last key item, and so I was going to reset there anyways, and then top of shrine had siren. So
Right. Yeah.
So I wasn't really able to do too much with that, but I was really just looking for those Baron hints. But getting the Moogle suit directly was nice. Honestly, the way I was playing the seed is I saw, we started off with Black Mage, and so I did like sort of the initial things first, and we picked up Slash somewhere early. And I was like, okay, all I want to do is find Break somewhere, and if I'm going to find Break, it's going to be in World 2. And so I just immediately went to World 2. I tried to spend as little money as possible because we really didn't have that much. I was like, I just want to find Break.
Yeah. Having those available, those spells available, and when you're kind of short on cash, it's a little bit difficult. One of the main kind of strategic things that went a little bit differently for both of you was that Francoise picked up a ninja pretty early and was able to use that to do a lot of things in World 1. You saw it, I think it was in Karnak, and I think you kind of considered it. I saw you kind of go back to it a couple times, but by that point you were already pretty well situated, it felt like, so that wasn't as powerful as it might have been in the early game.
Yeah, Karnak was... I checked that pretty late, much later than I normally do, and I already had Throw, and so I wasn't terribly concerned about Ninja because we didn't have any weapons. Just flat out.
Yeah.
I needed equipped swords or something, which I didn't find until later. I think it was in Mirage or something.
Yeah, Mirage.
I was just like, well, all right, well, this is useless. I mean, there's a Night Crystal. I'll just have Night on, which actually came up pretty big on the Fork Tower.
Oh yeah, those the blocks that you were getting in I think that was the Marigine fight, right?
No, Shiva. Because I had one Time Mage and I had a Knight. I had a Time Mage with Blue Magic, because of course I'm going to put Blue Magic going
of
to
course.
Fork. And then I had the Knight, and I was like, okay, well, the Knight, if I take the Knight off, I'm probably going to die by the guards. And so I'm just going to guard with the Knight, so that way my Blue Mage, or the thing that was acting as a Blue Mage and then as a Time Mage, isn't going to get hit. And then it's just a free fight. Because you can take out Shiva with a Dark Shock and an L5 Doom.
Yeah, that was a really well played fight. Being able to do that and being heads up enough to use that guard so that you could keep your Time Mage alive and X-Zone the remaining commanders was a very good play.
Yeah, it's something that I have done at the Twintania spot, for instance, is sort of that play. So I'm familiar with it enough. But it's always interesting to show off. I also like showing off Stalker, sort of the cheap way to kill Stalker if you have a Blue Mage.
Yes, that was a great way to see that in action. So that was two Dark Shocks to cut levels, right? And then you have to actually boost his level to get him back up to a point where you can Dark Shock again in the level 5 Doom. So that was a pretty quick kill.
And it will work in every spot. So the magic evade for Stalkers, even at Neo XF, is actually very low. And so your chances are you're not going to miss the Dark Shock. And so even if you see Stalker at Neo XF, that's sort of the good strat to use. Because you don't have to play Whack-A-Mole or anything like that.
Yeah, we saw a different strategy. Francoise was not using as much of the blue magic. In fact, once he got to Mirage, he was running since he had Ninja early, I think mastered it on most of his characters, and was running a dual-wielding chicken knife dancer for a lot of the back half of the seed. So it definitely, we saw two very different approaches to the seed today. So it was a really interesting race to watch.
Yeah, I saw that chicken knife, and I stared at it for a while, and I eventually bought one. I don't think I ever actually used it.
Yeah, well, as you said, it was the seed actually set up, especially in the first half. There really wasn't much in the way of physical anything available. You had gone to that trainer to use the flame whip, which served you well in a couple of spots, but there wasn't really much in the way of physical damage available, and really even the magic damage was a little bit on the lower side. At first, you were kind of still running with like say Ice 2 and that kind of thing in the first
Oh
save
yeah.
of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, okay, I want rods to break at this point, especially with that minnow being where it was. I was like, well, the only way I'm killing this probably is by rod breaking. Luckily, I found a couple somewhere. But I was just, I mean, the way I approached the sea when I saw Black Mage was find break, we had slash, and then I'm just gonna do World 2 bosses and see what gives me XP. And then I wasn't worried about what Francois was checking out from the bingo board, because again, these seeds converge, and so the idea is just kill each boss faster than your opponent. You know.
Right. That's basically what it comes down to. You certainly did a lot of that today. It's interesting with the bingo format. You sometimes get to see things that you can maybe metagame a little bit. I don't know that there was too much of an opportunity for that today, just based on the way that your routes were so very different. But did you see anything in particular that kind of tipped you off to what you might find at various places?
Yeah, I would say the most obvious one was Guardians.
Right.
Because I knew what FrancoiseHarpie had done at that point, and I knew we were in the middle of like a long chain for that pyramid page, and so I knew that Guardians were either in the front of pyramid or in the back of pyramid, and so I switched over to summon, for Lena, who was using running shoes to hold seed. Of course, Heavy Spear is the first one, and so I was just like, okay.
Yeah, I had just gotten done saying, you know what? Oh, Guardians are back here, but Fiery's already done Fork Tower, so he has Odin. This should be fine. And then first turn, you get the Odin out, and then it's Heavy Spear. And I just went, well, okay.
Lena took a nap for that one. The other ones, I mean, I knew Greg 1 had to be at the North Meta 1 check fairly early. And it would have been a nice metagame if I hadn't forgotten that the abductor spot existed, because I remember I checked it early, I saw it antline, I just completely wrote it off. And so I was thinking, that dip into the library that happened pretty late, I was like, okay, I am out of options, this has to be Ifrit's Fire, and then it's not Ifrit's Fire. I'm like, okay, well, what spot am I missing? I'm just like looking at my tracker, I'm like, I have done everything else. Everything else besides Sunken Walls. I was like, it's not Sunken Walls because I know I'm ahead of FrancoiseHarpie going into World 3.
Right. So, I think you did that Bow Castle check within the first 10 or 15 minutes. It was very early in the seed. And you saw Antline and just immediately left because the goal, I think, was you'd maybe already seen Minotauros at that point and wanted some levels. So Antline with no experience is kind of a pointless check there if you can avoid it.
And there was no way I was beating it.
And there was probably no way you were beating it because it was still like level 3 or something.
Yeah, I was level 2. I was like, I just want something to slash. You can't even break at that point, which is why I didn't even make the Hiryu Valley check, because I went into my menu early. I opened up the magic menu to check how much MP break costs. It's 15, and I had 14. I was like, okay, I got to go into World 1. I got to do the Wind Shrine check, which of course was no experience. I'm just like, okay, guess we're going to continue doing this. But I mean, I thought it worked out pretty nicely. That Mughal village helped a lot. Certainly, if you were going with a physical backing, it sounds like FrancoiseHarpie was using just that Brave Blade being there. At least I think it was a Mughal.
I think it was, yes.
Yeah. Summon 5 was there. I know that. I was like, okay, Bahamut's gonna get me through some terrible fights that I just don't have any way to go through, like Necro.
Yeah, that came in very handy in Flying Lanka. Not a terrible spot. You're obviously happy to see Necro there than in the Void, but
did you notice that like Necro's HP is completely bugged out on that spot?
Yeah, it seemed a bit weird because you took the barriers out in one Bahamut, right? And then Necro himself had
like 3,000 HP.
Yeah.
I was just like, wait, what?
What just happened? I saw, because I think it was just a couple cast maybe bolt a couple times. I don't even remember what you were using.
Yeah, 2 bolts. Yep.
And it was done. Oh, okay. Well, all right then.
Yeah, the one thing I'm a little bit sad, I tried to show it off, but I think I was 10 HP over, was the sap glitch kill of Archeoavis, but I got to show off the menu boss instead, which is slower,
Yes.
but it's always fun to show off.
It's still very cool. I saw you break the Venom Rod. Both you and Francoise actually went that route, so it was neat to see that a couple times and get to see a lot of those strats today that are kind of unique to certain bosses. So that was a nice demonstration from both of you in that fight particularly.
Yeah, I mean, I came into today as this like FrancoiseHarpie is an incredibly strong opponent, right? He was in the finals of the main tournament last year, so I was just the things like the sap glitch and Archeoavis I thought were sort of, if I could nail it, it would give me a good advantage, because I don't think I knew I was ahead into World 3 and I knew sort of what else I needed to do, but it's easy to make time back in this mode if you run into a wall. I was just like, I just want to find blue mage somewhere, and then I'm just gonna stop looting completely.
Yeah, I mean that's basically the way it turned out. We saw both of you. You tend to be strong enough in this mode too, where finding kind of all the different alternative means. Once you have kind of your main output, what you think you're going to use, you can kind of stop making checks like that, and it can speed things up a little bit.
And just it's always nice to just ignore looting World 3, honestly.
Yeah, really. I mean, it saves a good bit of time.
But yeah, I definitely thank you for taking this on solo for an early morning for you.
I'm happy I was able to do it. I wasn't sure I'd be able to do commentary, but I know I want to pass along our well wishes to Rom too, who was going to commentate today's race, but he is ill right now, so I hope he's feeling much better soon. And I want to give my thanks to Francoise as well. I know he couldn't stop by, of course, being in France much later for him in the day, and he didn't have the time to stop by to talk to us. But GG to him today, and GG to you as well. Nicely done, Fiery. Anything else you want to mention about the seed, or we can possibly talk about next week too? We've got our semi-chaos round coming up in the semifinals.
I wondered who my opponent is.
Yeah, you have a bye this coming week.
How really?
Yeah.
Huh. I thought it was a revenge match. Or 1-1, right? So
yeah, we are 1-1 now. But probably wouldn't be if X-Death weren't a jerk about Dispel.
It's all good.
It's all good. So I haven't played much of Semi-Chaos. I've played a little bit of it. Do you have much experience with the flag set?
No, the only time I've done Chaos was Complete Chaos, and I completely understand why we're not doing that, because you don't have... So, Semi-Chaos, it's just the default learning abilities you still get. So it's just the learning abilities that you get as you progress through jobs that are randomized. And so the big casualty for this is Mix, because Mix is not a default command, it is the level, the second job level of Chemist. And so that can be anywhere. But things like Summon, if you have a Summoner, that's fine. Blue, if you have a Blue Mage. So you still have the options, and more importantly, you still have Fight and Item, which in Complete Chaos you don't.
Yes, so, that can be very challenging. But in this mode, fortunately, we don't have to deal. We at least have the bare minimum essentials.
Yeah, I would think... for both of us, I would think the best thing to do is sort of refresh yourself on Sing strats, because Bard will have Sing natively.
Yes.
And so you can use that as your base for the end game, rather than having to luck into Mix.
Right. Because as you said, in this mode, if you have, say, you could have a Time Mage, and they can still use Time as long as they're a Time Mage, but the abilities that they'll learn will be from some other job. So, like you said, Mix can just be on anything. A Summoner might learn it, a Trainer might learn it. Something that you're never going to use, like a Thief or a Monk, might learn it, and then you'll never see it. So having a Bard can really be the MVP of this flag set, because you'll have access to Hero Song, hopefully. But other than that, if you can't come across any of those things, then you're going to have to figure out your end game. So it should be a really interesting couple of races to see in the semis, and looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the modes that make you think about end games. So, this mode didn't really have an end game whatsoever, which is honestly decently nice. Um, but these next 2 weeks should be certainly the finals. Will test whoever's in the finals knowledge of the game, unless they pull off like a samurai chemist for a job.
Yes, yeah, because that's you're limited to the 4 jobs you start with, and that's all you get. So that will really be a test. So these the semifinal weeks and the final week, some really interesting flag sets to really kind of test your mettle in career day.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to facing off with you again. Maybe a bit more convenient for both of us in terms of timing. But I'm also glad that I was able to schedule something with Francois, because this week was going to be difficult, just scheduling wise.
Yeah, absolutely. We're both. I think I speak for everybody who was watching the race. They were very glad we got to see both of you race. So good luck next week.
Up to you.
Thank you. And I think that'll about do it for us, unless you've got anything else. Many thanks to our SpeedGaming crew here, and to all of our tournament administrators behind the scene doing a great job. I think that's about it.
Yeah, just one more match left for this week at, I think it's like 10:30 p.m. Eastern.
Yes, that's correct. I do want to point that out. So just under 12 hours from now, opposite end of this match of the day, we've got our last quarterfinal match, Dreiselizer versus Garlisle. 2 great racers, storehouses of knowledge of the game. And Garlisle, of course, former tournament champion, won the first career day standard tournament last year. So 2 very talented racers. Please stop by for that race as well. Is scheduled for SpeedGaming tonight, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 Pacific, 6:30 Hawaii time, right? So that'll be where Dry is.
Yep.
And should be another great race here to close out the quarterfinal week with Blackout Boss Bingo.
Or Full Clear Boss Bingo.
Or Full Clear Boss Bingo.
Who knows? Maybe the last seed of the week will make it so you only need 3 tablets instead of 4.
You never know. It could happen. We're waiting for it.
Not holding my breath for it.
Me neither.
All right, man. Thank you very much for inviting me out, and thank you again for soloing.
Absolutely. Pay no attention to the tracking if you rewatch it. Everything was fine. It went great.
Cool.
All right. On behalf of everybody, then, I'm Archfield Monk. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you hopefully tonight for the last quarterfinal race to set up our final 4. Have a great day, everybody.